Well, hello guys. We have a few people have joined us and this is my first Substack Live. I'm so glad that Mary is the guinea pig here and I love seeing these names pop up. And because we are both ADHD, we will try to kind of have our conversation. Please
No
share
promises.
questions in the chat. And so I'll try to kind of work through things and then kind of look at the questions so I don't get super sidetracked.
I love
But
it.
I'm
I
so
love
glad
it.
that you're here. And if you guys don't know, we're here to talk about Mary's new book, Parenting a Spicy One. And it is so, so good. I have been listening to it, which has been delightful to hear your voice. And it is an easy listen to because not all, I feel, well, I like, especially ones like this, I like because, a lot of my audience, are busy moms and we like listening to things, but I recommend getting the hard copy too. So Mary sent this to me, but this one is, you're going to want both. You're going to want to listen and then you're going to want to go back and be like, okay, I need to actually, and it's also very, visual. Like it's easy to skim through and find what you were like, okay, I need to read that again. So Mary, for those who don't know you, let's tell a little bit about you and kind of how you got here coaching moms with spicy ones.
Well, I am a spicy one. I was raised by a spicy one, and then I got raised as in RAZED by my own spicy one. I don't know if that's the right spelling of that. I really struggled with parenting, and it didn't come naturally to me. And um, I've just my whole life been a little bit more intense, more fierce, more emotional, more than the typical person, and that was something I hadn't really worked through until I was a parent. And like a lot of people listening here, you're trying to figure out how to show up for this little person the best you can, but becoming aware of a lot of stuff that maybe you haven't worked on before or ways that you weren't shown up for. And there's nothing like an intense, strong willed, possibly neurodivergent child that is going to sort of throw up challenges. And I really wanted to, write a book that was for that moment where you're not sure you like your child. You love them because that's your job, but if you aren't sure you like them, this book's really gonna help. Um, and yes, we all want ways to change our child, but this book is gonna take you through things that you can do when you can't get control of your child, but you certainly can be in charge of your child, and understanding that difference and finding a way to have leadership that's calm, kind, and firm, with a child who is none of those things. Well, they're very persistent. And maybe we should define what like
Yes,
a
I was going to ask that. Define for you to define the spicy one. I think that's super helpful.
Yeah. So the spicy one is there's some temperament traits that are just across the board. And that is really highly intense, low adaptability, meaning like if you said there was going to be a play date and then the friend got sick, it's like you're waiting for how upset they're gonna be. It's just hard for them to pivot. So there's a little bit of rigidity there. They're highly perceptible, which could also be called highly sensitive. They notice everything, whether it's the change in temperature or your mouth is in a certain way, and what does that mean, mom? Or you moved the chair. So they're just an old soul in that way. And then the fourth temperament is that they are highly persistent. If they want something or have a vision for how things are going to be, they are going to pester you and stay at it. And yet they give up immediately on things they aren't immediately good at. And I have a quiz in the book to figure out, are you a spicy one? Is your child a spicy one? They tend to have so much energy and maybe be what we would call hyperactive in the ADHD diagnosis, but they aren't necessarily diagnosable. They are just more loyal to their own soul than to your adult agenda, which is different because most kids are wired to kind of look around and go with their peer group and do what everybody else is doing. And this child is not. So
Which has a
it's
lot of good to it, there's a
yeah,
lot
oh,
of
there's so
positives to
many.
that, but he's hard to parent them.
Yeah, it's going to be the most effective and impactful adults. It's the activists, the um the leaders, the entrepreneurs, but it makes them really hard to parent. And when you say there's good, if you take the cover off, I have a
Mhm.
list of all in alphabetical order, all the
Mhm.
words that are positive about this child because sometimes we start seeing them as like our challenge when really they are our curriculum and they are here to teach us so much. And I just wanted to keep helping moms and dads find how they can appreciate this child and show up for themselves as well in the process, appreciate themselves because you can't
Mhm.
really leapfrog over it. You can't be like, well, I'm going to be a great mom, but I'm not going to take care of the little parts of me that are getting very triggered by this child.
One of the things I really appreciated about the book is that, Will Mary gives a lot of examples, a lot of analogies, a lot of, kind of mindset shifts, ways to think about things, small things, but there's also a lot of nuance because I think one of the things that I appreciate is, I have 3 kids, and they're all spicy in different ways, and I think my oldest, um, who is kind of and I know your older one was your spicy one. My older one, he had very much had the rigidity. When he was little, I would have thought, "Oh, this kid is so spicy." But it wasn't until when he got an autism diagnosis, I realized there was a lot of these things that were coming up that I, was having this friction because of my expectations, and so it's like I kind of understood that, and then my second child is, adopted through foster care. So, he has both trauma and he has ADHD and deals with more of that, explosive, um, what did you use the word explosive? It's not dysregulation, but, um,
I mean, explosive is a pretty good
the
one. It's
anger
that it's
the
that 0
anger,
to 60. Yeah.
the word when you're talking about it being physical, that kind of there's
Oh,
a way you
the type of aggression is not
yes,
necessarily premeditated.
yes.
It is a, yes, I know what you're
Something
talking about.
aggression, that's what you use it. Is it
Impulsive
explosive
aggression,
aggression? Yes, yes. So I have
where
one
they're
child
left
yes,
yeah,
where we
they're left
really deal
feeling
with that.
as and nobody
Yeah.
talks about there's not a lot of books with what do you do when your kid gets violent, but the spicy
Yeah,
one gets violent sometimes,
yeah.
and it's not like, "Oh, I'm thinking how I'm gonna hurt you, mom." It's impulsive aggression that where they just don't have the brain power yet to settle things down, and their limbic system is making all the decisions, and then we're left, like, thinking, "Oh my gosh, I have a bad seed," and that's not what's going on,
Mhm, and there's take
and
but then my 3rd child is much more she's just very strong-willed in that and she knows her mind, she
classic.
knows what she likes, she's like the classic spicy one. She's like
And let's
she's
moment of
gonna push,
silence.
she's a leader, knows what she wants and asks 1,000 times for things, persistent, all of that stuff, so
And I wanna take a moment to say that there's something that happens with a mom and a daughter who's a spicy one. Um, a spicy boy pushes your buttons in some ways because they can be really physical or they can be highly emotional and you can feel like, is this kid gonna be okay being a boy out in the world with so many emotions? So that's its own um, thing to navigate and find your own misplaced versions of what it means to be a boy, right? But with a girl, we sometimes subconsciously want them to be smaller and less out there and leaderly because we're trying to keep them safe. And we have to like do a reckoning within ourselves about that because this child does not need us to be one of their bullies. And I just want to name that there's like psychological stuff going on when you have a daughter and it's a do over and you're watching the world through her eyes. It's just a lot.
I think 100% God knew that I needed the 2 boys before I had Libby because I think because I think so much of that parenting, which you talk about so much in the book, is this journey of letting go of your preconceived ideas, letting go of this idea of what a good mom is, adjusting. So I'd gone through so much of that by the time she was born. I had 8 years of infertility. So I have a big difference. My oldest, there's 8 years between. So I had done a lot of work and still I have more work to do because letting go of that stuff. But what I think I appreciated is even in thinking about my different kids, is you realize that there is so much work in this because there's not just one way to parent a spicy one. There's not just one way to parent a neurotypical kid. There's just the it is an art and not a science. And I think I think you address that and work through that. But I think just even listening to your book is just a reminder that this is you talk a lot about it being a sacred work, sacred calling. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the, recovery from addiction journeys that some of us have been on, in that when you realize, "I can't make this kid behave in a way that maybe makes me feel proud in my community," or I can't like, I have a vision of how our family night's gonna go, and now they want it a different way, and we're having all this conflict, like, I can't control my environment the way I thought I would when I would be a parent. And with that comes a little bit of realizing you need to consider a higher power in this dynamic and a higher good. And um, it becomes sort of like a heroine's journey, like Moana or Moses, where at first you don't want the journey. You just want your kid to do what you want them to do. But I think as you begin to do the deeper reflections, you realize like there is beauty in this child having their own way, and I'm supposed to teach them all these things and guide them, and I'm gonna have to break down the parts of me that are ego and just want it done my way, and I'm gonna have to be okay with inquiring of myself, "Why is this important? Am I ready to hold this boundary? Is this one more flexible?" Like, it just takes so much more, being in partnership with yourself and compassion for yourself,
Mhm.
and if you're a people pleaser, it just rocks your world, but it's okay because people pleasing is a really sort of deflated way to live your life. The spicy one is here to teach you that you get to say no to things and you get to say, actually, that's not how our family does it. That's not what works for us. But it feels like all great spiritual battles or journeys. It feels like it's taking you apart before it's building you back up.
Absolutely. It is a lot. It is such a refining process too. The one thing I was trying to write a note because I wanted to come back to a question and I can't find my pen, but I'm gonna try to remember it. I'm gonna hold on to it because I want to
Good
come
luck.
back to it. What do you feel like when people come to you are like the biggest mistakes that they have made? And I like that there are so many times in the book where you talk about someone told me to do this and I read this book. I read Shepherding Child's are these things. I'm like, oh yeah, check, check, check. I did all
Yeah.
those things and they didn't work. Um, that you feel like, when you get to someone that those mistakes that you see over and over again in moms in this with dealing with
Yeah,
kids
I
like
think
this.
the biggest mistakes I see in parenting a spicy one is the, idea of not respecting the tentativeness of a transition, and that, when a spicy one is working on something, if they're over here painting and you're like, "Okay, it's time to go," you've just created a power struggle without knowing it. There needs to be um, a little more nuance and honey in the transitions and that can come through um, predictability and rhythms where when we do
Mhm.
this, then we do that. That's really hard for somebody with ADHD as a parent. I
That's
was
what I
not
do.
great.
That's what I help people do. So,
Yes, okay.
uh,
So that you ask Amy for that. W but what really helps is making sure that you are setting a vision of transitions for them that they can get in their brain so they feel like they have some power over it, because the spicy one is really, they're motivated by having power, and not power in like a, "I will rule the world," but like, "I wanna impact the world. I have a vision. I wanna make it happen." They're the
mhm,
creators, right? So, because of that, we wanna bring in their creative brain into the transitions. So that's letting them talking about like, I see that you are gonna do some painting. So we leave for school in 30 minutes. What's your plan? Or when will you? Or let me tell you how it's gonna go. Like you're putting it in their brain and you're setting an expectation of what's gonna happen. That's big for them. If you're going to the grandparents' house, you're talking about like, do we play with her Yadro figurines? No, we don't. You're talking about it up front. So you're gathering them in and partnering with them, but then you're also connecting before you're doing any correcting or
mhm.
any demanding, or you want to connect. And so that's coming into their world for a minute. I like to think of them as like when they're fully in something and they're building something, They just hear "Womp, womp, 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 womp," and they're not you didn't come into their world yet. And so with this child, you really need to come take a beat. Like, time starvation is your biggest enemy. You gotta take a beat, breathe, and get some kind of attachment resonance going where where you've got some eye contact. It's not look at me. It's not that. It's more like, what are you doing there? Oh, wow. Or coming alongside until they take a breath and look over and see you. Now there's a connection. And now they're more open to, sorry, I opened my AirPods and messed
Oh.
everything up. Um, Now they're connected. They're more likely to be like, oh, you have an idea. Let's go with it. But if you don't take the time to connect, and that
Mhm,
connection time can be 30 seconds to 3 minutes. But if you don't take that time to reconnect, you kind of wake up their counter will. And
mm,
they've got I mean, this is a contrarian kid, right? This is a kid who's like, "No, I don't do that." Like, they're looking for the no. So, you don't wanna wake up that part of them that is wired to not be influenced by somebody they don't trust. And so you're constantly working
mhm.
on attachment, connection. I'm for you, I'm with you. If you get into, and we all do it, you get into
Which
that
is you're not you're always de-escalating.
yeah.
We wanna not escalate their energy to the what do you want? Or, keeping it calm.
I think, yes, we want calm. This
Yeah,
child sometimes needs high sensory, so sometimes we gotta
yeah,
upregulate them. I'm talking more about, have you connected with them? And sometimes connection
yeah,
doesn't look calm.
yeah,
Maybe you played on the floor and you're rolling your bodies over top of each other and they're feeling
yeah,
deliciously connected to you. Now you can say, "So, where do you wanna put your shoes on? Because it's time to go to
yeah,
school." But if you just come in and say, "It's time to get your things on," you're gonna get so much more pushback. So the connection is really
mhm.
important. The
I like that
other
you in
oh,
the
you
book,
go.
you talk about the 2 feet, t
The
being
2 by 2
2
by
by 2 to
2.
do it, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's a
great, talk about
real
that, yeah.
people love that technique because
I
it's so,
think
like,
if there's one thing that I wanna apply right now, I'm like, to me, that's
yes.
that.
Okay,
I
the
could
2 by
do
2 by
better with that.
2 is
Mhm.
not, and it's in here, but
Yeah.
it's not lobbing commands across the house. Your child is so, tactile um and sensory that they need you kind of in their space to do what you need them to do. And that's so frustrating. Like, I'm grieving that with you. That sucks. I want to be able to be like, hey, grab your things. I'm doing this. You're doing that. But that's not effective with this kid. They need you 2 feet from them at the farthest. So you're within their 2 feet bubble. Their two eyes are looking at your two eyes, and your 2 feet are still. So that's the 2 by 2 by 2. You're not moving around and going, okay. So, like, when you're distracted, it's like your tell that you're probably not going to follow through. And it's not like they're consciously going, oh, I don't have to listen. It's just more, you have not made that connection. And so you want to get close and be like, Amy, it's time for us to go to school, which is very different than, Amy, grab your things because I'm in. And that doesn't work. Don't lob commands. Be 2 feet with them. Have your 2 feet planted. You're not multitasking, and get their eye contact, which you would have gotten by having some connection already. Does that make
Which it's
sense?
also yes, absolutely, but it's also, like, if you step back and think about it, it's basically, this expectation that you're going to be a present support for them in this
Mm.
transition. So you're not
It-
expecting your child with these high emotions, high needs to be able to transition by themselves
It's a body
right
double,
away.
right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
using your
I'm ready to go. I've gotten myself ready to go, and I understand that I'm all ready, and now I know it's your because for us, it's always that, like, last 5, 10 minutes of, like, "Okay, we said we were going, but is your water do you have a snack? Is your water bottle full?" 'Cause they, like, remember last month, they remember that stuff. So it's like, I'm ready, and now I'm assuming that there's gonna be that 5 to 10 minute, and I'm gonna be ready, and I'm not gonna be mad and angry, and, "You should have been ready." I'm
because
gonna
it's just
be
it's part of your routine. Let's
planned.
accept
Yeah.
it and stop suffering. And you said something so important, is that we are already ready. Because there's this feeling, this And I talk about it in the book, like we have these inner archetypes. Some of us have an inner victim that gets inflated very easily of like, I'm not even ready. I didn't even get a chance to brush my teeth and now I'm hell. So don't do that. You must get yourself ready first. And maybe that means you are not leaving your bedroom until you have shoes on and you've brushed your teeth and you're dressed for the day. And then you can be a support and you can use your body as one of your best parenting tools, which is I'm right here. And it's not threatening, but it's in a positive, kind way. I'm not going anywhere until we do this. And they could feel when you have a parental solidness that like, yeah, this is happening versus I'm scattered. I'm not even ready. Here's my victim, or maybe I'm going into my monster of like, I told you to get ready. None of that is effective leadership. We do it, we all do it, and it gives us a chance to repair, which is pretty powerful too. But if we can take care of our own needs, get ourselves ready, and then move into that 2 by 2 by 2 parenting, and rather than ass parenting, where we're laying on the couch. I mean, that's not usually us. That's usually
Mhm.
our sometimes our partners who are like, "Hey, go do this thing." That just doesn't work with the spicy one. We need proximity.
Mhm. And it is a lot, and it is frustrating. It's
Yeah.
the, one of the things you also mentioned that I thought was interesting is you talked about fear, um, how fear is kind of a waste of energy, um, things you're talking about in disciplining them. There was something about that that I thought was just really interesting, and I'm not getting the phrasing totally right, but I don't know if you know exactly what I'm talking about.
As you're looking, there's a couple places. One is fear of like, I'm afraid this kid's gonna grow up and have issues. That's a kind of fear that we have to really become aware of, that we have these kind of latent fears about our kid. And I do say in the book, like, I want you to write them out and then write the opposite, which is the hope. Because if you are constantly um, practicing your fears, that bleeds into the way you show up for your kid. What I say about discipline is that we don't need
That's
to
where it
be
was in the
angry.
discipline. Yeah, it was around the discipline. Yeah.
Yeah, in the discipline, I say that we are all often operating off the belief that discipline has to hurt
Mhm.
or have like a gotcha. Now, like there has to be a pinch to making an impact or changing a behavior. And it's actually the opposite. That when we set a boundary and we discipline, there's much more likelihood of reaching that child's brain and soul when we are bringing a grounded kindness and firmness and calmness to it. And so we have to find that part of us that's like, no, I sit like that is not how you lead and it's not how you impact someone. It's because what happens is when a child is afraid of how you're showing up, and they can be afraid you're going to hurt them, or they can just be afraid I'm getting separated from the pack, sort of an almost an
Mhm.
unconscious fear of like, I don't belong yet again. I'm disappointing these people. Or I know I'm not going to be able to have my screen time now. When they're going into this whole place of punishment and separation, they can't take in the lesson that we're trying to teach. So much more powerful is the do over. Like, we're going to try that again and I want to see you do it correctly. But I'm staying in, I can still stay in connection and in my loving while saying that was not okay. And I think we were been on the receiving end growing up of people who were very angry and disappointed and had to show it to us, but none of the science bears out like that actually that sort of authoritarian stance shows time and time again in research to harm challenging children and explosive children and at risk children. They much more need us to find, um, to stay connected to them, to set our expectations, and to find these little glimmers of you're doing it. Even when
Mhm.
it's like, I need you to brush your teeth, like you haven't done it. I see you going upstairs. Oh, I appreciate you going upstairs. Like naming the things they are doing right because this kid is doing they're getting so much negative feedback that they kind of give up. So we have to do a lot of delighting in them. That's a big part of my book too.
Mhm.
which is a sacred responsibility to delight in your child, to light up when they walk in a room versus here we go. And a lot of us, it's okay if you're there where you're sort of locked in this, like, but they are constantly disappointing me and they don't like me and I don't like them, but I'm going to, we're going to fix this. You got to find that part of you that appreciates who they already are and begin to like make a list. And you can use that outside of my book with all those words, or there's a another list in there too of like what's already amazing, and find your delight in this child. Like, what do you love about them? Because you show up as a different parent when you are for them in that way versus, we're going to whip this person into shape kind of thing.
I think in so much of the book, the practical parenting tips, start at like chapter 17. 'Cause I mean, well, it's weaved throughout,
Too
but
late.
there's so much of it's the work that we have to do that for ourselves because especially if you have, very had very authoritative parents or had were parented that way, then, you might not have had anyone that really delights in you. Delighted in learning, and we can't, which so much of your book is about that aspect of it too, that and I know parents are thinking, "Well, how
Oh,
do I do that if I
I mean,
never had
full
received that?"
disclosure,
Yeah.
I spent a year in therapy just unpacking the fact that I would like to be delighted in. I've never been
Mhm.
delighted in. And so, we all write the books
Yeah,
for
we
that
need
we
it.
needed, right?
Yes.
And this is the book I wish that my mother had had. Um, and I've been able to delight in my children, but there's not many people on this earth who are responsible for delighting in you. There's just
Mhm.
if you have one or two parents and maybe a grandparent, and there's many people that will teach a child how to make their bed or a lot of executive functioning things. I mean, obviously we want to teach that too, but that stuff can be learned from others, but you can't learn that you are delightful and worthy and good enough as is and a pleasure to be with. Can't really learn that from somebody else. You're looking to for your self-concept from your parent. And
Mhm.
so that's an important sort of like deeply held belief that we need to delight in our child. And I know it's difficult.
And then how kind of speak to that. There's that delight, you're trying to foster this delight. And then you meet that with then face real life people who are maybe judgmental or critical of, taking this stance or, not being maybe expect you to, not I can't believe you let them do that or let them talk to you that way or whatever it is. Can you kind of speak to that? 'Cause I know there's a lot of
Yeah,
women
there's a lot
who
of
or
judgment.
families that
Eh,
that, especially when you're trying to break patterns and create
Oh, it's so
change.
hard.
Yeah.
And there's a whole chapter. It's actually like a hidden chapter because it's online about dealing with the judgment of others. My publisher was like, "This book is too big," and I was like, "But this is so important." So this will be you just scan a QR code and it's on the website. But first of all, it's getting really clear on your why and what your goal is for this child. And like you have to kind of get really clear on yourself, and that's the gift of having um a child that brings a lot of conflict is you're going to have to figure out and get really grounded in your style of parenting and how you like to discipline, what you think's important so that people don't get that sense that you're like, I don't know, like, can somebody get on this ship and be the captain because it's not me, right? So it's like before you deal with the judgment of others, you kind of have to deal with your interior judgment. Do you
Mhm.
feel and in the book I talk about doing like a future forward. It's 20 years from now and your kid is dying to come home for Thanksgiving. They're bringing a friend and the friend's like, "Why are you so like charged to get home?" And they're
I
like,
love that story. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like, "You don't know my mom. She is this, she is that. This is how she treats me. This is what our home is like." That's what you're parenting for, the long term. And there are gonna be people in your life who want quick results, but finding and sometimes it's sitting down and writing out like 3 sentences of like and I have a bunch of scripts in the book, but like telling like maybe it's your parents, I appreciate that we both want, and so naming the thing we both want little Harrison to be a kind member of society and a you know, whatever. We both want this, and I see that, and I thank you. We have different methods for getting there, and I am working with this child's nervous system. I am taking into consideration what he's capable of, and I am holding. I have a whole plan here, mom, and I don't need your input on this. And so that's going to be really hard. This judgment is going to force us to set boundaries with other people or to remove our child when everyone's like, oh, here we go again. And you're like, a lot of people can't
Mhm.
tolerate the big emotions and they become like children. This is a child who's got a lot of um, brain maturation ahead of them. And so you might need to remove them from the situation, but we don't want to do that thing where we gang up on the child along with everyone else. We have to find that core within ourselves and name what they're doing, maybe have some conversations ahead of time. But then there's people like in the grocery store. And
Mhm.
I think we have to let that go, knowing that there are other people who are so touched by seeing you squat down and get at your child's level and be like, we're not going to do that. I see how upset you are. Now this kid is screaming. And I mean, anyone who understands a strong willed child, there's nothing you can do. You can't stop the child from screaming.
Mhm.
It's like an alarm that's got to go to its full completion and then it will be done like a car alarm almost. And so how do you want to be in that moment? How do you want to regulate yourself? That's the hero's work is like, I'm going to do slow exhales. I'm going to tell myself this is not an emergency. I am going to not roll my eyes. I'm going to give myself a little distance if I need to. I'm not going to make my child the enemy. We can get through this. We've gotten through this before. It's going to be okay. A lot of self talk, a lot of somatic work in your body. That's like amazing work. Somebody else who has not been on the journey is going to be like, oh my gosh, look at that permissive mother. You are far from permissive. This is like a whole acrobatic, high flying wonder that you're doing, but people aren't going to see it that way all the time. And so finding community is important too. In your community, in the community I have, finding other people who are like, oh, I totally get it. And those awesome people who are like, my spicy one is now 22 and they have much more control over their emotions. They're still fierce and irreverent and creative, but they work through these things.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think having the community piece and one of the things I think that I tell people a lot too is, like, I think for so long that I just always thought I was supposed to fit in certain places, and it's like the more I got attune to where I felt safe, it's like if I don't feel safe, my kids aren't probably gonna feel safe. If I feel like if I don't feel safe to kind of show up and do the things, take care of myself or walk around if I need to walk around or have a fidget toy or whatever it is, it's like you see like the eye rolls or like the those aren't
That's
safe
so
places
important,
for my
Amy.
kids either. Yeah.
Yeah, that felt sense of safety in the parent's body, if that's missing and you're like, "Here we go, we're going into, to this family gathering, and I know Uncle Joe doesn't like the way my kid," like, when you are showing up in a different way in your body, and your kid is such a sensitive little sponge and a mammal who's checking your offspring is checking, "Are you good? Am I good?" And we can't hide from them when we find a situation stressful, which then stresses them out. And they're so in tune with us that we have this responsibility to do a lot of work in our own body to help regulate them as they learn to do it themselves.
This isn't something you talk about in the book, but I know you've talked about this on social media before. As you kind of did this work for yourself, like what were some things that you kind of had to let go in terms of like I know you're an entrepreneur, you have and I'm sure that those things were there, those desires and ambitions were there while you were also actively in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Um, how did you kind of work that out in
I
terms of
had to
making
let
space
go. Yeah.
for
I
in the work?
There's like small things and big things, right? Like small things, I wanted to be the kind of mom that dressed like her child. I wanted us to have like mommy and me outfits. And I know that's so dumb, but like I just think that's so cute when a mother daughter and my daughter's like, no. I don't want to wear that. My daughter immediately had her own ideas of what she wanted to wear, a lot based on sensory and what was comfortable. And so this, I had to give up this exterior image of like, look at us, we're all in the same shades of lavender and we're so photo worthy. Like that would have been a daily huge battle that would have torn apart the fabric of our relationship and doesn't matter. Here she is now at 22. She's got a great sense of style. It's her own style. There's nothing really lost in that moment or from that. But in the moment, it felt like, but I'm supposed to pick out what everybody wears,
Mhm.
right? And so I had to let go of that. I had to let go of being the one who seems like they have it all together at school. Like I wanted to, I was the Girl Scout troop leader for a, a half a year. And it was such a battle at every meeting to get my own daughter to stop almost, she was like completing with me like carnival barkers. She'd be like, come over here, everybody. I'm going to tell the story. Like what she was doing was I was modeling for her how to lead and she was like, "Let me get in there. They're very experiential learners. Let me try that. I can do that." And so I would be in this like, "Stop it. No, be quiet." And I was like, "Wait a second. What's my higher calling here? It's to be her mom and to delight in her. It's not to be the best Girl Scout leader and like that's not the season that this is." So I had to let go of um, showing up in a way in the community maybe that would have fed me in other ways. I had to let go of these long artistic projects that I thought would be really fun to do together because if it wasn't her idea, she wasn't really interested. What have you had to let go of in order to be the parent you want to be?
I think a lot of those things I mean, I think there's a lot of things, and you talk in the book about, like, the idea of the good mom. I think the a lot of the things that, like, realizing that things that I thought may other people might think I'm a good mom versus, like, what feels like me being a good mom to my actual humans that I'm responsible for, you know? That I had to let go of some of those things of, being more, um present for I mean, well, we tried homeschooling and that was, like, not a good fit, but a lot of the volunteer and I just realized that in order for me to have the capacity to parent my kids well, like, I can't be Mary Poppins to, like, everyone too, that I kind of, more specialize in their, like, loving them well and supporting them well. I can't, like, be
Yeah.
all the things for the,
There's also like,
volunteering and class parties and all that stuff.
mhm, which, gets some of our social needs met. We don't get to do
Yeah.
it. There's also with the spicy one, they either need a lot of, stimulation in their day to do different things, or they need none of that, and that can be a very, opposite of the parent. Like, you might need to, like, see people and to run some errands and to get that novelty met, and that is exhausting and overly stimulating to them. Or the opposite, um, if they just sort of stay home and don't have something going on, their behavior is so much more destructive and they need things to go to and you just want to have a nice lazy morning and that leads to no good, right? So when you're mismatched that way, it's really hard to.
Or you have kids that are both. That's
Oh, it's
for
the
me, my
worst.
first transition was the first one that I was used to. I'd be like, pick them up from school and be like, "Okay, I planned a play date and we're going to this park and we're doing that," and he would be like, "No, I wanted to go home." And he had this, I was seeking the novelty and he wanted the predictability and to go home and do the thing that he already had the plan and he had the rigidity. And so then I learned to back off and figured out how to meet my need for novelty and for challenge and stuff without it being dependent on him. And now my youngest she has much more of a need for um stimulation and so figuring out how to weave us all into the same family is an ongoing work.
Yeah, I often get teachers who are like, I love your work and I've got a spicy one in my class. What do I do? And it's really hard for me to give advice because when you have 25 kids, it's same with like when you have 3 kids,
Yeah.
when you have multiple kids with different needs, somebody's needs are not going to be met at that moment. And sometimes that's just an important thing to name. Like
Mhm.
we don't all get our needs met at the same time. And I have a special place in my heart for sort of the sibling of the spicy one, because yeah, I'm sure you have them too. And watching them have a more dramatic home environment than they would choose. When you have sort of I have a mild child and a
Mhm.
spicy one. And I think we have to be really clear how we carve out space for that mild child who doesn't really ask for a lot of attention.
Mhm.
Um, and yet, I interviewed for this book a lot of adult mild children, and there was this pervasive feeling of like, just because I didn't think you, parent, had the capacity for me to ask for anything or to
Mhm.
be a problem. So I just pushed it all down. And even as an adult, sometimes adult parents can think that their mild child has no needs, and that's not the case. They've just been sort of trained to stay quiet about it because the other child, the spicy one, was so in your face with it.
That was 100% me. I was the mild child, so I just learned that all emotions were bad because my sister had really, really big emotions, and my parents didn't know how to handle them. And so I was just like, emotions are bad. I'm supposed to be easy. And so for me, a big part of this work was the first part of just being okay with emotions because, so much of the parenting that you talk about is like building up your tolerance for emotions. So our goal isn't to, for our kids to never have big emotions or to never have meltdowns. I like the chapter about meltdowns is really, really helpful. Um, but the goal is to build up our tolerance, and I think for me, I just had to for before I could even do that, I had to build up just a tolerance because I had no I would just emotions
Yeah.
were, flee or stuff or
And and
so
you're
that
not
was kind of my
alone.
internal work of, like, being okay with being more in touch with my own feelings. You talk about this a lot too, having that emotional vocabulary, and so a lot of this work it isn't just, here's the 10 parenting things to do. It's an
Right. It's
ongoing,
internal.
evolving yes, there's a lot of
That's why
internal work and reflection involved in this
it's
process.
it's that's why some of, like, your deepest friendships are often with mothers because they've had to do this deep work and they know themselves more. Um, I think if a listener or when somebody is like, but how do I do that if I was like Amy and emotions were not okay? One thing that's really helped me is just to ask myself, who's upset here? Because with the spicy one, the emotions can feel so contagious, and we can be kind of enmeshed in, well, they're upset, so I'm upset, and taking a moment when they start going, I don't want it. You can hear it coming, right? Like they're upset, to ask yourself, who's upset? Okay, they're upset. And just take a moment to become aware of what is you versus them. You are two separate beings, and you can actually be okay when they are not. And that for some people is a revolutionary idea. It's also like, how do I be okay? I love metaphors, and one of the metaphors that I put in the book is being an emotional doula. And I don't know if you had a
I
doula
love
at,
that. Yeah, I did
yeah.
not have a doula. I had 2 emergency C-section and then a planned C-section, but I love that example.
Yeah, I did
So
not have a doula
the
either. I
metaphor,
had a
yeah.
husband saying, "Please, Lord, don't let her
Yeah.
die," in my ear, and I was like, "Please." But it's that person who is there to stay calm no matter how messy the birth gets. And the birth is your child's upset. They're realizing there's a boundary they cannot cross, or their overstimulation, whatever is causing the huge emotions. Sometimes that just has to come out like a wave and crest and work through, and it's not yours to take on. And so you doing the work to not panic and to hold space and to be okay when they are not, and to not take over or judge or try to fix it, you're just witnessing it with warmth. There- and if somebody was not trained to deal with a birth, it would look like a trauma.
Mhm.
And what it can look like when your child is kicking on the floor and has sort of lost control of themselves, but it's not a trauma. It is a
Mhm.
child a body trying to regulate itself. And you don't need to look at it with such like a, I've failed or they've failed. It can be more like, here we go. This happens about 3 times a day with this child, and I can be safe and they can be safe while it's happening. It can be okay. I'm going to go get an ice pack. I'm maybe gonna not sit right on top of them because even though that seems like what I'm supposed to do, this child doesn't like that. They like some space. And or maybe they don't know what they want. They're telling me to get away and then they're calling for me, and that's okay. You're a doula allowing sort of the dignity of this process that looks very undignified. And let's just like lower the stakes. It's not as big a deal as our nervous system thinks it is.
Mhm. Well, and then the more we do that for ourselves, if you like me, I feel like I had to learn to do that for myself too. Still learning, like feeling emotions, letting them be safe, letting them pass. And then that becomes has become a lot easier to do that for my kids. Um, it's kind of building up that tolerance that you talk about, the
Yes.
capacity for emotions,
Yes.
which, and so we only have a few minutes left. So there's two things that I definitely want to talk about. Then, so what, and I know you have a whole chapter about this, about when kids get violent. Um, what are you supposed to do when your child becomes violent? When the meltdown becomes a lot. And I'll tell, we have a child who has dealt with this, and I'll say we had to, in dealing with this, we had to create a lot of space in our life because it does take a lot of energy, to make progress in this area. It has taken a lot of energy to make progress in this area. So kind of
Yeah, and
share
it's
your insights.
I'm, like, opening up to that page
Yeah.
because I don't wanna get it wrong, and it's funny, I somebody said, "I don't think you should put this in here because I think you're legally putting yourself at risk," because I put in here, "I want you to learn self-defense."
Mhm.
And that's like that's a grieving thing to say to a parent who loves their child. I gotta learn self-defense. Well, you gotta learn how to feel safe in your body in a way that you can keep yourself safe and do protect yourself from being punched or kicked.
Mhm.
Um, because when you go into this place of my kid can hurt me, you lose your ability to be the safe one in the room and the calmest one in the room. And so sometimes when your child is being violent, it's going to rev up your limbic system, your nervous system
Mhm.
to a point where you feel things you felt when you were little. And so let's just name that when a kid is given to impulsive aggression, it's it's requiring from you a deeper level of healing so you don't let your inner victim come forward. And if that means taking a Parks and Rec course on how to block over and
Mhm.
over again, I want you to do that. I want you to feel safe in your body so that you're not your child's animal brain when they are sort of seeing red and not in their thinking brain is assessing you for are you predator, are you prey,
Mhm.
are you gonna make things better or worse? And so feeling safe in our own body really helps in that. Um,
Well, just like you were saying that, like, so much of it, because I can remember we had a foster child who had very impulsive aggression. This was when my kids were younger. But I can remember her favorite analyst came and she told me the two things you talk about. So hold them tight. We tried that and that did not work. And she was like, or sitting outside the door. I love you gave those two examples, and I'm like, those things did not work. But the thing is, in order to navigate it, you have to be in your thinking brain in order because to
yeah,
navigate
think
supporting this
fast.
child. Yeah, so it's like if you do go into that fight or flight, or um, you're not gonna be able to navigate it to know, how do I support this child because they can't think, and how do I keep everyone else safe and all that stuff.
Yeah, and some of what helps you stay out of sort of fight or flight is having a practice way of looking at it. And some phrases in the book are that this meltdown is an involuntary nervous system activation, which is very
Mhm,
different than this kid wants to hurt me.
mhm,
This is involuntary because afterwards they feel shame. They don't
mhm,
want to be this person. Um, they uh, this is I also say this is an anxiety attack. This is a brain on fire. This is an uncontrollable emotional seizure. There's something about framing it in a way that's not about like good and evil or that really helps like lower the stakes. And we need to do
mhm,
that. And obviously there's the concrete stuff of like move the things that could break, move the things that could be
Mm,
used as to be thrown. Um, be a student of what your kid tends to do, what their body tends to do when it
mm.
is over it is outside of its working zone, and maybe put away the things that you are beloved for a while they're working through this. And so that's, I call that setting the stage for peace. Like put away that beloved clay sculpture. Do have the most loving interpretation of this by saying this is a seizure, because often they don't even remember it.
Mm.
And then I want you to de-escalate with your
It's also
body.
not them, it's like it's a separation of, like, there's this thing that happens, and how do we navigate with that thing, that the
Yes.
episode, the anger.
Like you're on the same
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
It's not like you did bad. It's like this is how your body responds. We're working on it. Also tracking that it's getting better, because in the moment it feels so dire and so like everybody's failing and we're one of those families somebody should call the police on, right? So having a spreadsheet where you name when these happen, what led up to it, what could have been different, and noticing so you don't catastrophize. I think it's really
Mhm.
important to be sort of to collect the data.
The data. That's so helpful. Um, I loved that advice, and I'm gonna start doing that for this child. He's made tremendous growth, but also especially he does have a therapist, and so I would love to have that for them too, because oftentimes it's like, you forget, but if I could just have a quick spreadsheet that I could, update it and share it to kind of track that. And then you can also celebrate it, because I think for me with my ADHD brain, tracking data is like the most helpful thing, because my brain always tend to in seeing growth in so many areas of my life, because
Yeah.
it tends to all blur together, and I
Yep.
tend to
Um,
work.
and like we can when we're yes. The other thing I want to say about when things get violent is to check that your body is de-escalating versus escalating. Like, are you are you if somebody's going to interpret you non-verbally, is it a de-escalation posture? And that's going to be different for different kids. Some kids are going to de-escalate when you stand up strong and have like a stop sign with your hands. Others are going to feel like you're aggressed and they're going to ramp up and they're going to need you to get lower. Other kids, if you get lower and sit on the floor, are going to come kick you in the face. So
Mhm,
there's not one way, but noticing how is what are my I come in peace gestures? And am I speaking from a high pitch? We're not going to do that today. Or am I going down into my deepest? I need you to stop that, or come here, or it's okay. um Finding, using your body, there's like maybe your kid loves touch, maybe they do not want to be touched, but becoming sort of a student of what works, and nobody's going to come tell you exactly what works with your kid. It's every body needs different things when it feels like it is in danger. And that's what's happening. This kid's
mhm,
body feels like it's in danger. And so you might be saying things like, you aren't in trouble, you're okay. But often words are not necessary because they're not taking in the words.
mhm,
Sometimes humor works, or it really pisses them off. But there can be that moment where they are getting upset and you do something dumb, like that old trick where you hit the door with your hand and then you pretend it was your own head that got hit and you scream out, ow, and it's kind of funny and slapstick. Sometimes that might delay um or take a violence off the path it was at. Like if you can get laughter any way you can, that's sort of the opposite of that escalation that happens with violence. And then sometimes it's involving other people who love your kid. I'm not a proponent of calling the cops. I think they escalate things, but having other people who your kid loves and feels like they love as part of this process, whether it's like debriefing or it's the neighbor next door will come over. Like don't isolate yourself in this.
mhm. I was just thinking, even with his therapist, we could even maybe like send a voice note after and say, "Oh, this happened. Uh, find something a good choice he made in that in dealing with it, thinking I think even thinking about better, like, in the you track them, but
But finding
looking
that
for
one
the
little
good,
silver
the
lining.
glimmer of, like, "Okay, you made
Yes.
this." We've had, you know thankfully, we
Yeah.
had seasons where he hammered holes in the wall and wrote cuss words on the wall, and then that he hasn't done that in a long time.
Mm,
And he used to throw chairs down. It's like now you see the progress of, like,
yes.
not
And
the good of the
storytelling
emotions,
is
it's the progression of, like, him getting making good choices, making better choices in the
yeah.
midst of those big feelings.
And often it's not a choice at the time. I do wanna say that. It's not like, "Hmm, should I throw the chair down, or should I use my words?" Like, I think sometimes we overstate when we're talking to a child with trauma that they have
Mhm.
a choice in that moment. They kind of have lost their autonomy on some level. Um, 2 things as we close. This child is very allergic to shame, and yet they do things that kind of make people feel ashamed. And so whenever we can pull shame out of the equation, like you're saying, like a very matter of fact, like, well, this is just what we do when we have an impulsive aggression episode. We have to let the therapist know, and I like to tell them what the bright spot was and what I'm noticing in your growth, and having a phraseology for it that's sort of neutral and not shaming.
Mm.
And then the other point I want to make just left my brain. So there you go.
Well, thank you, Mary, so much. That you guys, I don't see any questions here in the comments. So, but we have a bunch of people that have watched, and you guys, I'm just going to tell you, this book has there's so much good stuff in it, and I have read so many books. So, I mean, you guys know
That's
I've
high
and this is
praise.
yes, and this is what a lot of the times I'm like, okay, I get the gist. I don't need to finish it. This one, I'm like, I can't wait to read every little nugget, and there are so many nuggets. I think the 2 things I'm gonna try to do is the 2 by 2 by 2. I feel like that's my biggest the trying to take notes, um, really helpful, and then even the thinking of the posture of, I think Mary Poppins is gonna be my
Yeah, that inner
ideal
queen.
character.
Yes.
Yes,
And
I like that idea.
well, it was
So
lovely to be with you, Amy. Thank you for letting me talk to your people.
thank you so much. So, okay, so buy the book anywhere. Mary Geffen is here on
Van
Substack.
Geffen. Yep.
Van Geffen is on Substack, on Instagram. I'll make sure you have all her links, but go follow her on Substack, follow her on all the places, and buy her book because it's going to help you and your family so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
you.
Mary.
See you later. Bye.